Welcome to the Three-Sided Dice podcast. This is our first episode where we will talk about Dungeons and Dragons and all tabletop RPG elements. I am your host today, Tom, followed by my two co-hosts, Nick and Jarrod. And I think today we're just going to get it started with who
Hello,
we are.
I'm Jarrod.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
Nick.
Yes, they're very enthusiastic to be here. Yes, so today we're just going to tell you who we are, our history with tabletop RPGs, and I guess kind of the idea of where this podcast started. So if you don't mind, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right, cool. So like I said, I'm Tom. I started playing tabletop RPGs, I want to say 6 years ago now, when I was in college. Actually, with both Nick and Jarrod, our first campaign was Traveler. And Jarrod was our DM. And it was a fantastic experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I could be doing. All I knew is I made a character who was a bumbling idiot, but he had a good heart, and I loved playing him. And just the level of shenanigans that we got to get into as a party was pretty solid, and we'll talk more about that later. But I've been playing role-playing games now for 6 years. I've played Traveler, I've played Dungeons and Dragons, I've tried Pathfinder, I've played Starfinder, and we've even played a couple of homebrew systems, including the one that Jarrod made. So, what made us decide to get this podcast going was basically, I like talking about these things, I like talking with friends, so we thought, why not just record them and put them out for the greater public to judge us harshly for?
Yeah.
And harshly, we are prepared for.
Oh yeah. But Jarrod, do you have anything you want to say to the audience?
Well, I guess I'll follow in your noble footsteps here. Hi, I am Jarrod. I've been playing tabletop RPGs since a little bit before Tom, and I think it was like 4 months before Tom, because I was dragged into it in college too, and I just got dragged into it a little sooner than these two did because at least I think so, I dragged you two into it.
Oh yeah, you
Oh,
did.
yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. By DMing Traveler. Although I did start as a player for D&D 4E, and then we moved to 5E, I think halfway through the campaign. Since then, I DM'd for a long amount of time. Nowadays, I'm mostly a player. Because virtual DMing is a different beast that I'm not used to, and I've yet to adapt. I've also done a bit of designing. I've created a system that these two have actually helped me create. They had to deal with so much broken stuff.
I enjoyed the broken stuff.
Yes, well, you helped break it, so
That was the whole point.
that was the whole point. Yeah, but from there, just DM'd, designed, played, won't stop shutting up about. What about you, Nick?
Yeah. So as we covered before, I started playing with Tom and Jarrod. Jarrod was the DM. It was us and a few other people. And I loved it, even though like we played Traveler, and I've always been more of a medieval fantasy type of person. Medieval and Traveler, pretty instantly in love with the idea of helping to tell a story in real time with friends. That was neat. So I campaigned around for a while, and I knew I wanted to start DMing at some point. So after we were done with that, I started DMing a few one shots. I was terrible at it. It continued on, and then I got a little bit better. And now I'm mostly a DM, although every so often I'll play in like a one shot or with my brothers who also play and stuff like that. So yeah, most of my time now is spent as the DM for these two and a few other people as well in a custom homebrew world using 5e, which is the main system I play. Every so often, I'll still return to Jarrod's system, Tales of the Magical West, and also Pathfinder 2e, Dungeon World, and recently Starfinder. So I like messing with systems. They're all pretty cool, but the main appeal I get out of games is is telling the stories with people and also coming up with interesting worlds and fantasy stuff. Yeah, that's what I do with it.
Neat.
I think role-playing games in general are cool for a few different reasons. One, it brings people together. I'd say I'm probably as good of a friend to you two as I am today because we spent so much time playing D&D and other role-playing games in college. And that was
Oh yeah,
kind of our main connection. Because especially early on in college, like I don't think I had anything really in common with the two of you aside from that, and I guess the vague genre of we all played video games, even though we played vastly different things and rarely together.
yeah. But it did. I mean, it all led into tabletop anyway. It all kind of melts together. So
Yeah, I think both just the idea of playing together in a very communal space, as well as just like having fun doing whatever we wanted in that space, was a great chance for us all really to show to reveal a part of us that was, you know, a good friend to be around, and I think we all realize that.
yeah, I mean, I think I most of the time uh I play tabletop RPGs are with people I already know I'm friends with now. But every so often someone will still slip through, and it really does, especially if it's a campaign. It tells you a lot about their personality and what they enjoy, how they interact with media, stuff like that. So it's a great way to make friends and also get used to see your sides of your friends you're not used to seeing as much, which
Yeah,
So
is always helpful.
I'm thinking about it now, and I'm realizing that with in terms of just like one shots and everything, the people who introduced me to 5e to start, I actually started a little bit sooner than that, and it was at like these big 24-hour gameathon parties that they would run. They would do like the occasional one shot. So I'm actually used to playing with strangers, just completely running and gunning into like the dark essentially with a bunch of
Yeah.
people. I never remembered, and I don't usually think about it that way, but I started off just like meeting new people through tabletop RPGs.
so do you have any particular memories, any tabletop RPG stand out to you? And we'll start with you if you don't mind. You mentioned
Uh,
playing with both people you don't know and friends. Do you like one or the other, and do you think you're more likely to make memories in one or the other?
I think so. Looking back at it now, I think the two memories that come to mind is one that was with friends who I was DMing, which is during the Magical West. But at the same time, the probably the runner up, or if not like the tied for first, was one of my first run-ins with uh tabletop RPGs, which was a Call of Cthulhu one shot with the bunch of people, half of which I didn't know. So I think I'll start with the Magical West one because I think it's my favorite. Because it's like the perfect. It was perfect for me because one, well, I was DMing. I usually get a lot more out of tabletop RPGs when I'm DMing.
You also made the system, so
I
I'd hope
also
you
made the
have.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd hope you have a special place in your heart.
Yeah.
It certainly does for me.
Aw. It's nice to have a full playground that I was in control of, and really just a comfortable space to know the rules off the top of my head. Like I didn't need to read something. I was just like, oh, that sounds right. Oh, that doesn't sound right. But for this one, it was pretty late into um our run. I think it was towards the probably like 60% through our second season. So I arranged them like TV shows. So there was a season one and a season two. So we were like just halfway, just past halfway. And you guys probably remember this, but I'll explain it. You were all um, basically trying to find these artifacts that helped you get to the big bad. And this whole system is an alternative history fantasy western. So I can, we can spend a whole episode talking about that if we wanted to,
Oh,
but
We could
I'll
just
keep
take a
it
few minutes
simple.
to explain the Magical West a little bit. Everyone that doesn't necessarily know it as well as we do.
Oh well, of course. So basically, the conceit is that there was this whole secret magical world that was secret for like ever, like basically like Harry Potter is, where it's just like these people are in castles and robes, and
Except way cooler.
except way cooler. Yeah.
We're just gonna alienate every Harry Potter fan right now.
Well, I mean, if you're
Get
a
that
Harry
out.
Potter fan still in 2020, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, check
But-
out the Magical West. That's what I'll tell you.
Yeah, you can switch immediately.
But anyway, the main distinction, which is the frustrating point that I had with stuff like Harry Potter, was that there was no way you could keep that secret forever. So in the Magical West, they don't keep that secret. Eventually, a wizard saves Abraham Lincoln's life from being assassinated, and then everyone's just like, "Oh, magic exists. I'm going to exploit this for my own personal gain." And then everyone exploited it for their own personal gain. So that's like the setup, and there's a whole lot of other plot things because at this point we're just like a season and a half through everything. But essentially, the spark notes are Nick's character died.
His name was Jack Reed.
His name is Jack Reed. Tom's character Julius was very close with him, so he was coping with that. Our
He
other
was straight up my
friend,
dad.
yeah, pretty
Well,
much.
Yeah, like foster dad.
Yeah,
but
foster father, not technically, but
There's a lot of paternal relationships in
Mhm.
our run of Tales of the Magical West, which is weird because I never intended for that to happen.
No, neither did I.
But anyway, what I love about this the session, that the specific memory, was that it basically gave every player character a beat of a story, because we were in New Orleans to find this greater plot device, this artifact. On top of that, we were in town where one of the player characters, Lucy Ruth, was raised. So she had some personal history, specifically someone from her past who was out to kill her. On top of that, Julius had just lost Jack. I think it was like
I think it was the
4
session
sessions
before.
ago.
Was
It
it before
wasn't the
session?
session before.
Okay.
No, because you guys resolved some things at the collector's mansion first.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was still a fresh wound. Um and on top of that, the sort of like main antagonist got to make a quick reveal to himself. So I got to play off that. And it was just like this nice little combat encounter, because you guys raided a plantation house that had this whole big field in front of it, where you I think you guys decided to sneak in, if I remember correctly. And then once
Probably.
inside, it was this two-layered affair where there was basically this huge pocket of energy being created in the basement. And then there was the first floor where like all the fighting was happening. So people were switching between the first floor and the basement floor with like movement capabilities. I know Lucy Ruth could teleport and she would whip all over the place. So there was this interplay between the basement and the first floor, because I love sort of making these peak encounters really interesting. And then on top of that, I threw in basically the main tag, threw in a revived Jack Reed one, and also another minor antagonist that had showed up before. So there's like all of this going on in the middle of an encounter, and it all sort of collapses in on itself. Two other characters got to have really nice moments, but that weren't these two. Basically, one sacrificed themselves for everyone else, and the other one missed him for it because they were best buds. And then that set off an entire like other arc to get this character back that I didn't even plan for. It was crazy. It was a big time.
I think.
Yeah. Sorry, you can go.
Oh, I think narratively, Jarrod is a really excellent DM in weaving stories together. And I've DM'd myself, although I'm mostly a player. I often find it difficult to, make a session where every player has like there's just so much going on and it matters to each individual player and their personal character arc as well as the story as a whole. And honestly, that's probably one of like you did this well in Magical Cowboys and everything else you've DM'd, I think, but this episode in particular, like it hit hard, and I think it hit everyone hard, different reasons, and I think that was just really cool because it didn't feel like anyone was, a leftover piece in the narrative there, even though everyone was kind of there for different reasons.
Yeah, that's what I tried to do. So I had mentioned it a little bit that I try to treat it DMing wise. I try to treat it like a TV show. So basically, an ensemble cast. I want to try to give them all an excuse to do something, whether it's like an action or just like a deep character moment, or just even reflect on who they are. I try to give plenty of opportunities to do that, and I try to do them every session with not like quest hooks or anything like that, because it was really a pretty linear adventure, but with like these character hooks, I would try to set up. So I would bring Lucy Ruth close to her childhood home. I would make her sort of address the relationship that she had with magical vigilanteism and her parents and stuff like that. And I would lay that out, and I would basically make it available to her. And whether Kai, the player, would pick it up or not was up to him.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to do, especially for DMing, and especially when you have so many players. Is like because I think we had 5 people in that one, right?
At that point, I think we were at 4, and you were a guest appearance at
For
that
that
point
one, yeah,
for
and
that
then I
one,
and then I
and
came
you
back fully because
exactly
we
you
got back Jack.
successfully got back. Yeah.
Yeah. But regardless, like especially when you have so many people, it gets more difficult. But it's even more important that you give every individual character a chance to shine, like you said. Like, uh, if you know your character is really interested in the ancient history of the world, then throw them a bone every so often. Just like if you have someone who's only interested in fighting, give them a brawlers guild or something like that. Because the more characters, I don't want to phrase this. The more a character can interact with the world in the way the player wants them to, the more invested the player will be.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, because player is like both parts actor and audience.
yeah,
So there needs to be this sort of audience appeal to it as well as an actor appeal.
yeah, which is a big thing because in general with it, like, so when I DM, I treat it less like an episode of a TV show and more like a almost like a children's storybook is how I imagine it, which is wild because all my worlds are like extremely
Very
dark.
much
Not child friendly.
not child friendly.
Not child friendly at all.
Not to
But
read or the children that live in them.
yeah, but like when I'm envisioning it in my head, it's like it's just this giant picture book with very little text, and then you can look at the pictures and you sort of pick out the cool stuff, and you're like, oh, that's a neat detail, and I want to explore more, and then you just kind of go do that, and then the text at the bottom is sort of like the small guiding part, right? Like there is an overarching plot, and it'll get pretty cohesive, but if you want to just ignore that, you can go and you can, I don't know, go sit in a chair in the middle of the forest that will eat your brain out.
If
So
you're into that sort of thing.
yeah, if that's what you do, or if you take sorry, or if you do anything like that. So it's just always so different how people handle it. For the favorite memory stuff, so mine is actually also from when I was DMing, although the runner up was when I'm gonna mention the runner up super quick because it's a quick thing. But in that same campaign, Jarrod was just talking about the one he DM'd as Jack Reed. I had magic frost powers, and at one point Julius, who was Tom's character, like we mentioned real quick, was getting married to a woman who Jack originally hated for a myriad of reasons. But long story short, at the end of that one, Jack actually ended up crafting her dress out of frost in support of the wedding. It was just a super quick character moment. But to me, it was really representative of an arc that Jack had gone through. It was, I think, shortly after he had just like wiped a gang out of New York from his previous history and stuff like that.
He had just gotten revenge on the gang that basically drove him out of his home.
Yeah, so they killed his previous wife and child, and that's why he left. So he just went back there, killed everyone, was perfectly willing to die for it, and then it was just such a calm moment where he was sort of recognizing the new family he had built. So that was definitely a big moment for me, and easily my favorite memory as a player, just because it did so much. But in general, for RPGs, I enjoy the most, I think, as a DM, when players interact with the world in a fun way, or they figure out secrets that I set up like multiple campaigns before, or specific like finales and everything like that. And I also get a lot of enjoyment from when players just do totally off the rails shit.
Oh yeah.
So one of our sessions in the recent campaign, it was the sort of finale to a big arc where they went to the Underdark and they met the
5e,
Duragar.
right?
Yeah, this is 5e. This is you guys were the players.
Yeah.
Among others. You guys went to the Underdark, you met the Duragar, who are a group of like super stoic dwarves, and they were in the middle of a sort of war with some mind flayers. And long story short, they ended up committing genocide on the Illithid.
I was hoping we didn't drop the G word on the first episode.
No, yeah. Well, not on the whole. Yeah, it was genocide.
Oh. It was accidental genocide, which is
they were like, yeah, it was accidental genocide.
It was an accidental. It was like falling forward.
Yeah, it was.
Genocide.
So they got to the place where the Elderbrain was, and the Illithid sort of city, and there they saw that there was also an Aboleth who was controlling the Elderbrain for his own nefarious purposes, which actually still haven't been revealed in that campaign, so I'm not going to say much. But with that happening, they had previously met a Fey god of trickery who gave them a 6-sided dice, and he said, "Just roll this if you need my help." And they rolled it, and they rolled a 6, which summons a god of trickery and chaos. And that whole encounter just became a mess. There was math rock going on, coming off of our robot bard. They set up like a circus fight pit in the back while other people went forward and tried to kill the Aboleth and deal with the Elderbrain. Like hundreds of Illithid just running into the circus where they summoned an enormous fire elemental that was just trying to demolish them.
This started off as a stealth mission, by the way.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's an important note. It started off as a stealth mission. They got caught once, and then it was just all out the window. But that,
not just any stealth mission. We were like sentries. Like we were just
scouting. You guys were a scouting party for the main Duragar force that was supposed to come later.
Whoops.
Yeah. But that's such a fond memory because it was like, there was no way I could have planned for that as a DM. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in the slightest. And so it was really you guys taking the lead, which is a lot of fun. And in a similar way that Jarrod, I think you get enjoyment from watching people tinker with your system. I think I get the same thing from watching people tinker with my world, like the sort of factions and peoples I've put in there. Yeah. And that was a huge one because it was like there's no way any of them would have expected that in the slightest. And then it just comes in, and here's a robot on a phantom steed singing math rock as a distraction while other people try to continue scouting. It was wild. The whole thing was wild. So that's my favorite one. It's and I think it was mostly because you guys took the lead and interacted with the world in a unique way.
Yeah, being a DM is definitely about like cultivating that sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my god, I can't really stress enough how much fun it is really to mess with that, and to both be the DM and kind of have your players flip it on the head, but also as the player flipping it on the head. My runner up is me playing a similar scenario, where it's just like it was Call of Cthulhu. It was like this grim dark, well, not grim dark, but like you know how Call of Cthulhu is supposed to
Lovecraftian.
be. Lovecraftian and spooky, and we're just like bugging around Innsmouth. And by the end of it, it's like a full shootout. We're getting away on a car. The whole town is like Tokyo drifting us, and we're just trying to make an escape.
I could hear
so
the Euro
funny.
beat.
I love the image of like old 1860s cars, Tokyo drifting through a city.
That's exactly what it was. That's what you can't get that anywhere. You really
Yeah.
can't.
So
Definitely.
I know you both mentioned your love of DMing, and I have DM too, and I do enjoy it. But I think most of my favorite memories are actually as a player. And one that stands out for me, and I know how both of you mentioned you like cultivating the world. Well, one small one for me that just cultivated the world and that just made it feel a little bit more real is a campaign I'm playing now in 5e. I have a DM that I don't think either of you know. His name is Harris, and he went to high school with me. So we're trudging through a jungle alone at night, and we have the feeling we're being watched after throughout the day we've been seeing ominous carvings on trees, like warning us that something's coming after us. So we're on high alert as a party, and we don't make it to the next town by nightfall. And we're like, well, we don't really want to travel all the way through. Someone's going to have to take watch. As we're setting up camp and my character is setting up to take the first watch, something swoops down from the trees. It is a single grung, which for the people that don't know is kind of like a frog person. And it's just standing there.
I love those little guys.
It's just standing there with like a stick. And I'm just looking at it, like both as a character and as a player, because my expectations were completely blown. Like, we were getting like ominous messages that we were going to be brutally killed, and this thing comes at me with a stick. I'm like, all right, maybe this thing's tougher than I thought. My character punted it, and he surrendered. After he surrenders and literally screams for help, 4 more of them come with even more pathetic weapons. And at this point, the rest of my party's woken up and, like, this wasn't even, like, a roll for initiative. Like, they got there only to realize by the time, like, someone pulled out a real sword made out of metal that it's like, they're greatly outclassed and they can't possibly win this.
Yeah.
One member on our party who was a local to this jungle was able to actually communicate with them and figure out what they were doing. Yeah, they were the ones sending us ominous messages and, like, you know, threatening to kill us. They had full intention to kill us if they could, or like sell us into slavery and, you know, profit off us. Yeah, they just were so blatantly incompetent that they couldn't.
Those are like gnome sized, right? These frog
I think
people?
they're actually a little bit smaller. Like I said, my character was able to punt one. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. Small humanoid. I looked up the stat block. Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah. They scream for help because we're like, all right, well, I don't know about you guys, but like, I'm not letting this go. And I just like, I raised my sword to kill one, and we have a debate amongst the party. It's like, well, they were absolutely willing to kill us and are only begging for mercy now that like they've lost. They're not remorseful. They're just jackasses.
Mm-hmm.
Their mother comes for them after, you know, they've been screaming for mercy after we're debating whether we kill them or not. And this one-off encounter that was supposed to just be a joke, like the messages and them appearing happened over like 10 minutes of game time in a 3-hour session. We spend the next 2.5 hours as a party, like doing a makeshift like Phoenix Wright trial on whether like the justifications of crime and punishment and what we should do with them.
And how they apply to frog people.
Yeah, and how it applies to frog people, and if we're doing the just thing, and if we even care what the just thing is, because, you know, we're adventurers traveling through the jungle, and like we don't have time with this. And our party has a lot of different alignments, so we had like lawful good to like, I want to say chaotic neutral, and like just about everything in between. So my character, who plays things a little bit more fast and loose, is just like, no, they've already attacked us once. I don't care how pathetic they are. I'm not giving them a chance to get good at this. Just kill them. their mother, who is they're pleading to protect her 5 stupid sons, is like, I'm sorry, I was watching them, and they just do this sometimes and they get away. I'm like, to the rest of the party, that was a good answer. To me, I'm like, are you kidding me? They just tried to kill us, and you're just like, my bad.
I'm imagining this only slightly bigger frog person
Yes.
trying to put her children back on a kid leash.
Yes, basically, she's like, yeah, they just need some direction in life. I'm like, no, they don't. You just said they tried to enslave us. Everyone admitted this. Why are we going over this like it's nothing?
You didn't even say it was the first time.
Yeah, it wasn't. She's just like, oh, these things happen. Boys will be boys. I'm like,
boys will be boys.
And we had our DM was cracking up at this, and we as players are having fun. As serious as the debate was getting in game, because the world kind of became alive. It was just a nice distraction and diversion that our DM made as a 5-minute little thing, and he just anticipated either we give them back to the mother doesn't come and we kill them, or the mother comes and sees them killed. It was very 1, 2, or 3. No one could have imagined us having a Phoenix Wright trial in the middle of the night in a forest a jungle. Yeah, with frogs. Over frog people that effectively attacked us with sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, even though nothing happened that session, and the DM even's like, all right, yeah, we got off track here, but I just wanted to see where this is going. That was honestly one of the most memorable sessions, because it was just so stupid but so fun. And that no one accounted for this.
Yeah, of course.
We eventually ended up.
That's half the fun of the game.
Yeah, we eventually begrudgingly let them go with the promise of we're killing you if we ever see you again. You know that. Go far away from our sight and leave us alone. And haven't seen them since in game, and it's been 6 months of out of game time, so they're doing a good job of that. We do get cuts to them every so often being slightly traumatized by the angry party of bigger people threatening to kill them, which is just
on site.
Yeah.
You get cutaways of them just racking their own emotional.
Yeah, every couple of sessions, our DM still gives it. It's become a long-running joke, and I think that's another reason I like it. Is it's become part of our game's culture to just reference those 5 stupid frogs and their mother.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love the as a quick aside, the idea of cutaways in D&D. I don't use them, or in any tabletop RPG, but I've seen it before, and it's always so interesting to me because I think it could add so much, like you were just saying, especially with moments like that where it's just keep the gag going,
keep the bit alive.
But I don't know. I've never messed with them.
The other DM, Harris, I mentioned, is actually really good at them. In both the campaigns he's DM'd, we've used them a lot. Or not a lot, but we've used them enough to where there are a couple of small moments that, for the grand scheme of things, don't matter to the campaign. I think the other big one that we kept cutting back to was the campaign before this. One of our party members, broke a mild crime in a big city, and it's he had to pay restitutions to the victim. So he didn't have money, and we're like, we don't have money to really bail you out of this. So he effectively, he worked out with the store owner that he would work for him for a couple of days to, earn the money he took, and everything would be fine. So we just kept getting cutaways while our characters were doing things to, our halfling over a giant 10-foot tub of pasta sauce as he's slaving away in a kitchen. and for the rest of the campaign, until our party wiped a few years later, we just kept getting cutaways to that store and all the pasta sauce that's still being made there to that day. It didn't mean anything. It meant nothing.
Yeah, but it
was just funny.
Build the world, like you said.
It did mean something because it's funny.
Yeah, it made the world feel alive, and it's those small moments that I really love, and I cannot hammer that home enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But to go back to the cutaways, I think even when I frame my stories like TV shows, I still really don't do cutaways.
Yeah.
Mostly because, unless they're jokes, specifically jokes.
Oh yeah, these have all been used as jokes.
Yeah, because it feels like if I were to do that, I'd be giving the players a little bit too much information. Like there are definitely other interesting things going on that they're not a part of.
Yeah, but you don't exactly. They're not a part of it, so you want to leave it as a possible surprise later.
Exactly, but as
Yeah.
a bit, that's genius. I love
Yeah.
that.
Wonderful for that. Yeah, no, I agree. Especially with oftentimes I'll be like, man, I wish I could cut away to like what the villain's doing right now. Like
Oh
if
yeah,
it were a film or something like that, I would.
yeah. If
Then it's
like
like,
if I'm writing the script, then this is the part where the villain would talk to this other person to discuss something,
yeah,
and we'd
exactly.
really get to know the villain more. But you have to work around your very limited camera, which is the players
Yeah,
sometimes.
just focused solely on that. But that's another, I mean, it's a limitation of the medium, but it also encourages creativity. I mean, you need to be able to inject personality into villains and into anti-heroes and everyone in the scenes they have with the player. You can't show them in their personal moments or anything like that. So you need to figure out how to balance that. And that's always been super interesting to me. Especially with characters that are like exist in like a moral gray zone, like Clay. Like he's one of the ones where it's like I have so much. Clay is
Introduce
Clay
Clay for us
Robinson is his full name. Yeah,
in
Clay
the campaign that
Robinson.
you run, right?
Yeah, Clay Robinson's he's the leader of the Curtain, which is a street gang that exists, and he does a lot more than that too. But he had like a slow burn build up with the group, and eventually he got revealed. But when I was playing with him, it was I really like playing with him, but at the same time, there's so much backstory there where it's like, man, I wish you guys could see it, but it's stuff that you'll just never, most likely, you'll just never sort of figure out. So it's tough trying to figure out how to take that information and drive it forward to the audience, which is in this case you guys and
I
the
think
players.
I think Clay is interesting. I think a lot of your characters in World is interesting, but you've definitely left us breadcrumbs that about Clay that it almost feels like the mystery about Clay is going to be so much more interesting than like if you just dumped it all in front of us.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
I would even go to say that you just knowing all of that, even if there's like no mechanical way for us to find that out, even if on a whim something happens or someone makes an asinine choice that digs up, like brushes off some dirt on that, that's
Mhm.
amazing to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, definitely. So that's why, especially specifically with Clay, I think, because I noticed a lot of the times, especially when I was role playing with you all, like where you were asking him questions and he was responding and stuff. At knowing his past, it was kind of like I was just playing like a player character. It's like I know so much about his past that I can use this to inform what he's doing now. That was a powerful thing. So either way, I think it's worth coming up with information like that, even as a DM. It's just balancing that where it's like it's kind of just the quandary with anything when you're creating a story or character. You're like, man, I want to tell everyone this, but then it ruins
Oh,
it in the
absolutely.
moment later.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I
It's
think
it's about the when it's revealed
Yeah,
just about as much as what it is that's being revealed.
exactly.
I think definitely you don't need to reveal anything because if you stay true to your character, then a lot of it kind of comes out in an indirect way, even if they don't know the story behind it. I'll use the character in Harris's campaign as an example since you're not in that one, so I don't have to worry about spoiling anything for you. So,
Mhm.
so my character doesn't like talking about his past. My party knows he had a job that he'd rather not talk about, and that he's really obsessed with money. And that kind of shades in their opinions of him. And it kind of like they've come to kind of really interesting conclusions that I wouldn't have come to or wouldn't have thought of. So he was raised as like he was an orphan, and he's a thief and assassin to raise money for the orphanage he grew up in, kind of paying it forward. It's not a particularly creative story, but it's simple and it does the character justice, I think, and I'm happy with it. They decided that they took that information of wounded guy who is interested in money and very secretive about his past must be a prostitute.
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
when I say like
The
things come out in very interesting ways, like their truth about my character is and probably always will be that this dude is just like straight up a male prostitute. And honestly, that's almost more interesting than the truth, and how they perceive it still made for a fun story, even though they're not right per se.
Yeah.
And the
I think,
information they do have, like, they're still right about what they know. They just came to the wrong conclusion with it.
yeah. Perception is huge with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
because that's the sort of magic show that you're playing, whether you're a player or a DM.
I
Yeah.
do
How
have
much
one
do you
more
reveal to
memory
let them
that.
think?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
No. Go.
Oh, yeah.
That was a full thought.
I do kind of have one more character that I really, really love playing more than any others, to the point where I actually use them as NPCs when I DM, and I've written more about this character than anything else. And I think Nick, you probably already know who it is because I sent you a full multi-page document on him, and that is my
Yeah.
my human wizard Tobias in your campaign.
Yep.
He like I think that's the most effort I put into any character. Like I made like a full family tree for him. Like I gave him like 3 generations of family, and I gave them all backstories too.
Yeah.
Like
I did not
That's a
know
whole
that.
lot of knives.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a whole lot of knives.
yeah. There's a lot going on there, but like you said, like Jarrod, you would have never known that if I hadn't said anything. How much I put into Tobias and his backstory, and like
Nope.
even his family's backstory that helps in like influence who Tobias is. And one thing that I found really cool that isn't even about Tobias, but Nick as a DM, is you told me it's like these are really great family trees, but I'm never going to use them. I'm like, that's fair. I did this mostly for me. And you know what, Nick? You were a dirty liar because you did introduce
Yeah.
Tobias's family. And
Well, that's what I was saying before with the knives. I can't remember who it was, but I was watching a talk a while ago. It was talking about DMs and what to do as a player. And one of the things they recommended was you give DM knives. And the thought behind that basically is in your backstory, you should provide ample opportunity for the DM to either give you boons to interact with you. So it's like you introduce characters from your past that you enjoy and stuff. And that would be like Arisa's best friend who's recently appeared in our campaign. Arisa's another player. Or the knives in this case would be introducing an alcoholic brother who might get into some debt with a gang.
yeah, Clay actually.
Yeah, Clay.
Oh, funny.
That's actually one of the big reasons we met Clay is my character's backstory and
That
my
was our first introduction to Clay, I think.
It wasn't the first attempted introduction. We got, I think, some
No.
non-direct letters from him and some hints that he
Oh,
was
yeah,
running
yeah.
around. But the first time
Yeah.
we met him face to face, I do believe was because my character's brother threatened the safety of our family by owing this man thousands and thousands of gold.
Yep. Mostly, yeah. You guys actually snuck back into the city and ended up in his safe house. But he knew you were, and then after that he introduced basically, hey, go deal with this, otherwise I'm going to kill your family because
Yeah.
your brother.
That's definitely my favorite memory and arc from your story. To get back to my original topic, I think I got a little
Yeah.
is the writing of Tobias. There's so much that I don't need to necessarily say about him, but because I know everything in his backstory and his family's backstory and how he interacted with people before him, it has shaped a fuller character than I think I could have ever made in any other campaign, and he's by far the character I'm most proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even like digging up all that backstory, just having that in place and in your memory makes it so much easier to improvise. Makes it so much easier to just
Exactly.
like throw something out or even just like pause to consider what would Tobias do
Oh yeah,
because he knows about this or he's been through this before.
and to go off on a tangent from Tobias, Tobias is taking a break from the campaign, going on his own personal quest. So I decided to make the opposite of Tobias. Just took all of his traits. I'm like, what would the exact opposite of what Tobias be? Like, all right, we have Ulrich, is anti-Tobias in every way. He is a large physical brawler. He's not really a smart guy. Comes from a very different background. Handles problems very differently. And seeing him interact with the party as a whole, especially in combat, and where Tobias would stand at the back and launch fireballs, he's just like, oh boy, I'm ready to punch a fool.
Yeah, it's a treat watching the differences and also seeing how that grows the other members.
But I think Ulrich, I only came up with Ulrich and made him fun because I used Tobias as a basis. I just made him Tobias, but not.
Yeah, you basically just made a foil to the character.
Yeah, exactly.
which is always interesting too. I think one really important part of making characters for RPGs and stuff is leaving room for them to grow. I think that's something that people don't do
Yes.
often. Where it's like you can come up with and that's why I told you initially when you handed me the full backstory with Tobias, I was like, I'm not going to use any of this. Was because it's like you want to establish them and you want to connect them to the world already. But especially if you're starting at level 1, or if it's not like a high-powered campaign, they're gonna suck at things. Like they're gonna need opportunity to grow and get demolished in certain experiences and learn new things and stuff like that. And that's what makes their character. So even if your backstory is only they're kind of from this town, they had this friend, whatever, that's enough. So long as when you're playing, you're actively thinking of like, how is this shaping my character's thoughts?
Oh yeah,
How is this
and
making
as like a I think a good example of this is our mutual friend Richie
Also a
for
player in 5e.
Oh yeah.
also a
Yep.
player in 5e and was a player in Tales of the Magical West. When we first when we started Tales of the Magical West, he did not have a backstory at all for his character. He basically I pressed him to give me the rough, where is he from, what does he do, why does he know what he knows, and for all of season 1 that we basically just kept that first outline, and he allowed Isaac to be shaped in these different directions where he made a choice, and then after I would talk to Richie, I was just like, why would Isaac make that choice? And why does this make sense to him? And then eventually it would boil into the final result that we have for the next season, where it's like, oh, he was the sheriff of this town, he left it to go work on some other things, he left basically his surrogate son in charge to be taught by his surrogate father. And so
Yeah.
now I have two knives.
Exactly. It's like, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that you can go,
Character.
Tom.
Oh yeah, thank you. So I want to actually get your take because we're talking about the importance of like all these cool characters. What's kind of like? Do you have a style of how you make your character? Because I could tell you mine, and it's a little bit more varied now. Tobias is probably the exception why I loved him so much. I actually took the time, like craft a character's backstory, rolled the dice, and tried to fit like stats in and like abilities into who I thought Tobias was as a person. But honestly, most of the time, I just roll dice and I see what happens and I let the dice decide for me. And like I don't mean just rolling stats. Like I have a table. It's like a D4 or like if I roll a 4, that means I play an elf. If I roll another 8, it means I roll like a cleric.
Huh.
That's funny.
That's
didn't know
I
that.
know. I've heard that before. I didn't realize you did that for like the campaigns and stuff. I always when I'm making characters, and now most of the time I do it for my own campaign and world, so it's a little bit different. But I always try to ground them pretty firmly in the world, right? So I tend to start with a backstory first, and I'll have an archetype in my head, almost like a trope, and then I'll figure out how it breaks later on.
Okay,
But
so we
like,
do the opposite then. Because my
yeah,
backstory is like I roll like the bonds, flaws, and like ideals last. Then I make a backstory that like kind of hits all those points, and it's fun because I like creative writing, and it feels like a challenge, and it also
yeah, it's almost like a prompt that
yeah.
lets you then go and do from there. That makes sense.
I'll be fair. To be fair, this is a more recent thing I do, like probably within the last couple years, because I don't think we've played enough campaigns together for you to see it,
Hmm.
but I definitely stick to a very linear type of character that almost is played one for one in every campaign, and like I want to try something different, but I don't want to choose something different, if that
Yeah.
makes
So
sense.
the
Yeah.
tables are great for that then.
Yeah, the
That's
dice.
that's why they're there.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
dice are there. Like Saros, the character I mentioned, who everyone thinks is a male prostitute, that was just completely rolled random.
Yeah.
I have a
Nice.
way of the Kensei wood elf with half a face and is you know getting money for orphanages. That wasn't something I made for myself. That was something that I was kind of given to me, and I wanted to see how far I could run with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that rolls really nicely into what Jared and I were just talking about, where especially if you do something like that, that character has all the room in the world to grow.
He does.
It's like,
he could go anywhere.
yeah,
he is essentially like a boat on a river, and like it could go any direction as long as it's on the river.
Mhm.
So like that, he's basically like a victim to the story. Like things are going to happen to him, and he's going to react and then change as a result.
Yeah.
which is
great.
yeah, which is why what I usually build characters around is that I try. Well, of course, I like to ground them in a sort of like what they want, what they need. Very much of the writer in me.
Yeah,
But for games, I try to sort of plan this trajectory of maybe 2 or 3 roads that they could go down. So like a character I'll pick from a hat. I'll say Callista, who is the character in Nick's current 5e campaign. She's a tiefling blood hunter, so blood hunters already have this whole shtick going for them where they do the job by any means necessary. And Callista is very much not a by all means necessary person.
yeah,
She likes to sort of stick up for the little guy. She very much goes out of her way. She literally throws herself in front of people. So this has to budge. Like these are two complete abstract things that are not complementary.
They're conflicting
Either
within her.
they are conflicting, exactly. So now we have basically 3 paths that she can walk. Whether she abandons being the blood hunter, the ideal blood hunter, doing anything necessary. Maybe at some point she has to let a monster get away to help her friends. Or the opposite, where she has to stop the evil at all costs, leaving someone behind. Or she just continues to walk that road until that happens. But it's basically like this time bomb of a character choice that could happen whenever.
yeah. And even when it gets hinted at a little bit, it creates big moments. So like one of the more memorable parts of the campaign, I think, so far has been when you all found a vampire who was basically trying to take the blood of various people and create it into a child because she wanted a child and she couldn't have one. And you guys met the baby and she was successful. You guys again didn't get to stop her in time. You met the baby and you met her, and the group had to come to a decision basically of do we hand over this child to a vampire, the exact type of monster that a blood hunter would normally never let go away, to save ourselves because she was perfectly willing to kill you for the kid.
And perfectly capable is the other thing.
And very perfectly capable.
Like I think
Yeah.
the only thing that kept us alive was the safety of that child.
Well,
Yeah.
we don't know for sure.
Well, I mean,
You're not
I guess
Probably.
the DM will know, and you could comment on this or not. You don't need to reveal anything, but like at least from my perspective, it's like she probably just doesn't want to fight while trying to protect the child. Like her goal is the child. I don't
Yeah.
think she'd do anything to like endanger that goal. So we're like, I was content letting the kid go and just walking away because it's like this isn't a fight we win, especially against a vampire. Even if we survive now, she's hunting us down, and we have no way to get rid of her.
So
Like, we could get lucky once, maybe.
That's the clincher, where it's just like half of us were on that train, but the other half were just like, no, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Like we need to handle this. So now even after that, even where it's just like a flick in one direction or the other, now after we decompress from that, we have like this character baggage that we have to deal with. And we had
Yeah.
this conversation about it, and this conversation keeps coming up about it. And that's a sign of a good moment.
Yeah, still, and I think that was close to like 15 sessions ago.
Yeah.
But that influenced a lot, especially for Arisa, who's one of the other characters in the campaign. She's normally a pacifist, except for against undead. She just doesn't fight. She's like a purely support character, and she was full on board. Like this vampire needs to die. We can't hand over this theoretically innocent child to this beast.
Yeah.
So that was a big character interactions. But even on the smaller scale, to tie it back to Callista, where it's like, you're right, the blood hunters, especially the sort of group that you both joined, you and Alfred, who's one of the other ones, they're very much a serious stone cold group, and you both are not
Very much not.
And it's fun as a DM to play with that, but then it's another knife I can throw. Where it's like, all right, when something comes up, if you get called in with the blood hunters and they're like, this thing needs to die, whatever it is, and you're hesitant about that, or it's gonna cause innocence to get in the way or something like that, how does that get resolved? And that's a big character moment growth.
Yeah,
Character growth.
that's a big choice.
Yeah. Always fun.
Choosing.
Decisions.
Decisions.
But yeah, to comment back real quick on the how do you make characters thing, and Jarrod mentioned as the writing part where it's like creating a goal and trying to figure out how they get there. That's the other huge part of any character I make, PC or DM character like NPC. I try to come up with their biggest goal immediately, and then that will just drive pretty much everything they do. So for instance, the vampire woman we were just talking about, like you said, Tom, her goal, end all be all, she was willing to die for, was to get that baby. And everything up to that, you can't predict, especially in a format like RPGs or like tabletop RPGs. So everything up to that point is influenced by that goal and other parts of her personality that you determine, but the goal is number one.
Yeah, from a like coming back to like the screenwriting perspective, making a main character is about establishing their goals, what they want, desperately what they want, but also at the same time what they need, what they don't know that they need to be complete. So like if coming back to Callista, I would say she wants to help people, very much so. But what she needs to know, like maybe what she needs, and this is where it gets a little like loose. It's just like maybe she needs uh, something to die before she understands the stakes. Maybe she needs to know what loss is. Maybe she needs to understand that there are some people cannot be protected.
It will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Exactly, and that keeps it like super nebulous, where there's this open format in front of her, where she could come out any which way. She could come out like completely destroyed as a person, or she could change. She could change very little and just get a bigger sword.
Yeah.
So I do have one question, since we talked about like kind of the big goals of characters, and I don't know if this is just something I do, but often I'll write a character and I'll find that there are small, like, just by naturally playing the character from session 1 to, I don't know, probably the first 5 or 6 sessions, they're moderately different than how I envisioned them.
Oh yeah.
Like,
no plan ever succeeds, and no character ever stays the same after meeting other characters.
I honestly find that like sometimes it's not even the characters that I meet or my interaction with the world. It's kind of like me going through a character and then realizing I don't like exactly how they are, even if it's subconscious. Like I'll play certain things up more than I do, or more than I intend to, and it just becomes part of the character. Like, I'll reference Tobias since it's the one you're most familiar with and the character I like the most. And the Tobias in our campaign, he started off very, very enthusiastic about adventuring and kind of devolved into, I guess, a sniveling coward.
Yep.
But that the evolution it happened so quickly. I think in like session 0, like it's like it was a switch. But like I played that up more than I intended to. Instead of just being cautious, he just became straight up like traumatized.
Well, I think what I noticed of it as the DM, because I was trying to gauge how your characters are changing. It was he was definitely less enthusiastic immediately after session 0, which is really when he figured out some of the dangers of adventuring. But then after you guys went down to the Underdark and you saw some of like the straight up terrors that existed there, that's when Tobias became I do not want this. What am I doing?
It's like, definitely second guessing.
It's like I was a noble. I had a mostly comfortable upbringing. What the hell am I doing here?
Yeah. So that's another great character growth thing, and that I mean that's really a driving force for me when I play, especially as a DM, where it's like how do I take my players' characters who they love and who who I love, and I love seeing them interact with the world. And how do I make them change? Right? Like how do you inspire growth in that, or anything of the sort? And often, I mean, you guys, thankfully, you do it yourselves because it's meaningless if I force it. But like even with Alfred, who's one of the other characters in the campaign, he was a happy-go-lucky gnome who was also a blood hunter, didn't fit with that sort of style at all. And he would see adventure and he would just go all the time. And then one time he got stuck into a chair, which tried to sap him of all of his life force in the forest, and he almost ended up killing all his friends. And that changed him inevitably. And so then you see how he's sort of he's different afterward. Now he's a little bit more cautious, but he's still got that sort of vibe in him otherwise. And it's I love that.
After that point, he actually he multi-classed into thief just to
Yeah.
hide.
Just so he could sneak around a little bit more. Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a great way. Oftentimes, when I look at multi-classing, I'm like, man, I wish there was a way for me to narratively tie it in. And Richie, who's the player, just did that naturally. Richie's amazing at making characters grow through a campaign.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he's a natural at it.
He just gets it. That's what happened with Isaac. It's just like things just came up and he just settled on this idea of Isaac that just kept evolving and growing. And it got to this fantastic point by the end of like the Magical Cowboys adventure where it's just like, perfect.
Yeah, wonderful. Which is why, and to also talk about that, because you mentioned how you were like trying to egg him on with Isaac and figure it out. So in the campaign right now, we're about to go meet his parents. And I messaged him and I was like, hey, Richie, I wanted to talk to you about your parents and your family. What ideas do you have about them? Like, who do you think they are? And he was like, honestly, surprise me. So I was like, awesome. So now
he is so reactive. I love it.
So now it's really exciting to see
you
that.
Mean he doesn't have like 4 pages of family tree backstory?
No, but the thing is, that's just as valuable. It's just in a different way.
It doesn't,
right?
Just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm not trying to take a dig at that. Sorry if it sounded like that.
No. It was just I didn't want you to feel like it's like you have to be reactive all the time, because it's not. I mean, they're both. We went through a Tobias arc too, and that I really genuinely enjoyed that one a lot. And it's seeing how the characters interact with the world. It's all. It changes it anyway. So me being able to come up with a family character is great, but me being able to take a family character and adapt them is just as great.
Yeah.
Now I know you mentioned earlier, Nick, that like the DM like kind of has some power to change the characters by the world they throw. Like you mentioned, Alpha and the chair. That changed him, and while that was like Richie's decision to change Alpha and make him grow from that, like. You can't deny, like, you definitely had an impact on that decision, like, whether you know it or not.
I think the biggest impact with stuff like that is just, and what I really meant when I said I want to change the characters is I want to provide situations that could encourage change. So with a chair, especially with that chair,
a magic chair
in the middle of a forest. It was I know this is dangerous, and at first glance, it doesn't look like it. And that's just, I mean, that's a fun scenario in general to create, to see how people deal with it. And then the way Richie took that and the way other people took it just made it into a character moment. But at its core, it was just, this is a neat thing. I want to see how they interact with it. That's all.
Yeah, neat things that people interact with sometimes have a lot bigger impact than you realize. Sometimes it's just a frog in a forest, and sometimes it's just a chair sitting in the open, and it turns into a whole big campaign-changing thing, even though it's supposed to be small and kind of... I don't think your chair was a joke, and I'm not trying to say it's a joke, but it's like, it's rather insignificant for like what we were doing and what we've done since.
Yeah, it wasn't related to like the plot at hand at all. I mean, it was part of a bigger story in the world. We talked about that. You guys know there are 3 other ones like it somewhere in that forest. But that's kind of irrelevant to the point at hand, which was
we have no reason to seek them out though. It's neat world building. We know that like we found out what it was, and we found out there are others like it. But beyond that, it's like we didn't really search for a reason to go like looking for them. We're not like trying to find out more. But like it wasn't like I don't think you were trying to like nudge us in like this is something you guys should do. It was just world building. It's pretty neat. Same Same with a lot of what you do. Like there's just a lot of
Yeah.
in your campaign in general. I think there's just a lot of really neat world building, and it feels like it's an ever expanding universe where there are like real people with real problems going on outside of our.
Yeah, it's you keep your world very, very populated, which just like people, both interesting characters and their problems. So like there are problems that our party will run into that it's clear to me we will have no impact on because it just doesn't fit into what we're doing right now, and we like bigger fish to fry, so to speak. But
Yeah.
that's going to happen no matter what. And it's not it's like a it's almost like how side quests would actually work in video games, where it's just
Yeah.
like the main quest does not wait. Ganon is going to come up and slam the world into two pieces if you don't, go and get him instead of breaking every pot in the town.
Yeah.
And likewise, if you don't do the side quests, their problems will either get resolved on their own without you or not at all.
Yeah. Which is I think that's one of the biggest things that contributes to you both and to the general players as you guys viewing it as like a really like difficult world, because that's come up a few times before in conversations, which I don't view it like that as much. I mean, I have some dark tendencies in there, but like um in my mind, the idea of like this is an issue, it exists, it will keep existing until it doesn't, regardless of what you do. It's like a core tenet of how I view it, because like you said, I'm really interested in keeping the world feeling alive. But I get how that can result in a feeling where it's like you really have to pick and choose your battles, and that's been interesting to see how it comes up, especially because there was a whole session where you guys just spent like 2 hours just like planning out and going through all the plot points
We
and the
made a list
yeah,
of
you made
what
like a
we would
full
handle.
like a Charlie and Always Sunny list.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great to interact with that as a character because I think it feeds into Callista's and Alfred's sort of struggle all the time where we can't help everybody.
Mhm.
There is this sense that there's always something going wrong, and it even works with Tobias too. Is like adventuring is a dangerous game. We run into all of these problems. We can't deal with all of them. No one's asking us to deal with all of them.
Yeah, I do love. There are a couple points I want to make to just piggyback off this. Like I mentioned earlier, my character Tobias is no longer in that campaign, so I have Ulrich. Uh, Ulrich is a brute. He's just there. He is a simple-minded. I'm going to fight things that look tough and are willing to fight me. So a lot of the problems that like Ulrich is willing to deal with, it doesn't matter the morality, like the stakes or anything. It's just like, so you're telling me I could swing my sword at something, especially if it's something magical that Ulrich wants to fight. Like he does not like magic and is willing to behead any magical or arcane person doing something he isn't a fan of.
Which
Which,
is wild because you're in a very magical spot
yeah,
in the world.
yeah, that's a whole different story that I could go on about with Ulrich's backstory and his upbringing and his backstory. But there are a lot of problems that we end up solving now just because Ulrich wants to swing a sword at something. And he's like, okay, guys, I'm going in. And he goes in.
Yeah, violence can be surprisingly effective.
Yes. Especially if you're not worried about the repercussions that come afterward.
Yeah, that's the big part. We'll
Which
see how
Ulrich is
that
not worried about because, like I said, he is a simple
develops.
man.
Which is contrasted nicely by our team pacifist, Arisa, who very much doesn't want to fight anything unless she has a good reason to.
Yeah, it deeply cares about the consequences.
Yeah. He's also anti-Arisa as much as he's anti-Tobias. Well, I think this was a good first episode. So,
Yeah, I'd say
So
so.
too.
it was great to have both of you having this conversation with me, and thank you for everyone who listened tonight. And this has been the Three-Sided Dice. I am Tom. This is Jarrod and Nick, and we are signing off. And we will see you at an undisclosed time because we don't know our schedule yet.
Bye.
See ya.